Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. Yes, Matt and I were just saying it's been almost 14 months to the day since you came on the podcast the first time.
Wow, how the time flies. That was before I was diagnosed with why I can't talk and walk. I just knew something was wrong because it was the end of September when they told me I had ALS. And so, I mean, it's all good. It's my way of dying. It's not a big deal.
You told us on the last podcast. It was November.
Then it was less than a year. Well, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
September 27th.
Well, because I remember what you said. You said, you know what? I'm going to keep going 100 miles an hour as fast as I can for as long as I can. And
well,
I think about that all the time.
Yeah, I don't go fast. I didn't say that because I don't believe in fast. But I'm going to keep creating value as long as I can, and hopefully do better and better. Not faster and faster. I could probably get worse.
Carol, you probably heard this before, but because you should. You're just such an inspiration, and to hear what you just said there, in a point in your life where this is where you are and this is what's going on, and for your attitude to be, I'm gonna just keep creating value for as long as I can. Honestly, would send a chill through me in such a positive way to think that here you are, and you could think a lot of things and do a lot of things at this point in your life, and nobody would blame you. And your priority is to create value for the community, whatever community you're interested around you. If that doesn't say everything, I don't know what does. I mean, good luck topping that. I mean, that is just the great. That is truly one of the greatest things I've ever heard anyone say. I thank you for saying that.
My pleasure. It doesn't feel like a big deal. It feels like my mandate as a human being. We have a role to play. Humans are needed in the evolutionary process. It's not about us, and we get trapped into think it's all about us and ours. And so the only difference in me and some people who might not say that is I've been in a developmental process for my entire life, working on myself, and leading others in doing that for themselves. And so if you do that every day, it changes your worldview and it gives you force. I mean, right now, I am daily losing muscle and ability to speak and energy, but I feel more and more force for doing what matters and playing my human role when I work on myself. It's like the food, the fuel. And if you work on trying to get more for yourself, you lose force because you can never get enough if you're going after getting stuff. So I think that has helped me a lot in my life. And those terms to me that I say to you feel like there's much reminders to me. Carol, you hear what they ask? What are you supposed to think? And you work on what you're supposed to think. And you say that, you say, oh, thank you, self, for reminding me. So that's a little different worldview, I think.
It's amazing because, whether a human being lives to be 50, 60, 80, 100, for most, it doesn't even matter because they stop working on themselves. Right. So what's the point,
or never start.
That's even bigger. Never start. Yeah.
Carol, when did you? I think I can't write fast enough. When did you decide that working on yourself was the priority, and how do you address the distinction or the I can't think of the right word, but working on myself is good for the community. Like it's like kind of like, they're opposites, right? So when did you decide that working on yourself was it the way you grew up, or was it something that happened in your life? And how do you decide that that is good for others as opposed to that's just good for Carol?
So I have some weird beliefs about this. Are you ready for those?
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Okay. My cosmology is the one that was kind of reincarnation, but with a lot of twists on it. And so I believe that before I was born, I had to apply to get a body, and I had to get approved to get a body, and I had to make a promise to get a body. And I went through all that, and I made some promises and set up things like, okay, Carol, when you're older in life, you're going to get ALS. And you're going to do that because you're going to know how and have to work on yourself to be able to live with that. It's a pretty horrible disease. And so I think before I was born, I knew I was going to have to work on myself. And then we're born and we forget. It's not in our mind at all. And we have to somehow something have a shock to our system. I had some pretty rough shocks. I don't know how much I told you before about my upbringing. I had a father who was a pretty crippled human being, not physically, just mentally. And he was pretty abusive to everyone around him, including he was a justice, an elected justice on the courts, who kept getting appointed into higher position and could do more and more harm with sending people whose skin was the wrong color or said the wrong thing to prison, including his own grandson. He was a mess. He was a very racist human. And somehow, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I could see there was something wrong with what he was seeing, or I don't remember the details, but I would confront him around his racist comments, and I would defy him by going to birthday parties of Mexican kids who worked for it, their parents worked for him, and he would punish me by putting me in closets and locking the door for many hours, trying to break my will. There's something about my will which got stronger. And so that was a big deal. There were a few other then people I ran across, like when I was in college. Do you know who Thomas Kuhn is, who wrote the structure of the scientific revolution?
I'm familiar with the name, but I'm not tremendously
He
familiar with
introduced
the
the
work.
idea of paradigm shifts. He's a political philosopher. I got to study with him at Berkeley when I was an undergraduate. And that gave me a name for some of what was going on. And I was, I don't know, 66, 20 years old. And now I have begun to label something. I said, oh, my father had a different paradigm than me. That was very useful. And one night at the Rathskeller in Berkeley, which was a pub where students and professors went on Telegraph Avenue, we asked him, how do you help people change the paradigm? Because there were 20 of us sitting around from around the world. And I don't think it was me, but someone asked. And Thomas said, well, I figured out the idea of paradigms and how they work. It's your job to figure out how to help people change. And you got 20 to 25-year-olds sitting around here, and even after he left, we talked about it. And when I was 27, I had my first idea about how to articulate paradigm shifting, and I created a framework and started working with it. And then I met a few other people, including the guy who founded a lot of change at Procter & Gamble, who knew a lot about paradigm shifting in companies. I introduced my idea. I became his a devotee and eventually his colleague. And so I got names and framework for how to think and how to work on myself. And so I think I knew very young that I needed to work on myself in order to help other people. So it was a very personal experience, particularly with my father and my mother, who was mentally ill. So I think it's when I met the P&G guy, it was very helpful because he had many frameworks and many practices that were quite unusual. I'd never seen them anywhere. And they taught you how to work on yourself in community. And one of those was what was called 3 lines of work. It was 3 concentric wings, one inside of the other. In the inside ring is me, and the middle ring is community work group. On the outside ring is a commitment to systems evolving, and usually a particular one. I eventually landed on business because they had so much impact. Now, it was clear that those 3 rings were connected, which is what your actual question was when we started here. How did I know that when I worked on me, I made a difference in the world? It was seeing it through a framework with a paradigm of interconnected and the ability that it all has to move together. That stuck with me now for 50 years. So you learn, you pay attention, and you find people who are quite unusual. They're almost supra inquisitive about higher order things. And I was blessed. I've written quite a bit about several professors I had at Berkeley who really affected. And I was there in the middle of the free speech movement and the war in Vietnam. So I'm an old person who was in the middle of some radical change. But so were a lot of professors. So I know, does that help you, Matt?
It does, Carol, and you've got such a wonderful way of explaining and the storytelling and answering the question, and it's just you're a very fascinating person, and explaining your background makes you even more fascinating. You know, it's very interesting. And let me. You said something earlier, right when you were talking about ALS, and you said then you have some different viewpoints on. I forget how you worded it, but it like, where did this come from? And you said you make a deal. You think you made a deal with someone. Who's that someone? And I'm just going back a little because I've made that note. I'm very curious. Who do you think that someone you made a deal with is? Is that a god?
Okay.
Is that, what is that?
I don't know, but I made up some answers to it that I use until I get a better one. I have this image of this council of human bodies availability that's in the world before birth. Now, who knows? I don't believe in the traditional image of anybody powerful like something people call God, but I do believe there are energies. They're different than human form. And when I get to the other side pretty soon, I'll try and get a message back to you. But
So
I
I think,
appreciate it, Carol. I'll be
I would like that.
yeah,
I think about it a lot.
Me
yeah.
too.
And I think that veil is pretty thin. I'm running a set of workshops for my membership. I run things not by programs, but by members, and I have people who've been with me for 49 years now, and we're all still learning together. But I'm running an event for them every 6 weeks called Conscious Dying, and it's recorded, and people can buy it on one of my websites if they are interested. And people, it's on seed-communities, IES.com, and it's called Conscious Dying on the nav bar.
Conscious
right.
dying.
Yeah.
Conscious
Okay,
dying.
thank you.
I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to be conscious in my dying. And I'm sharing that with people, including all the exercises I do. They meet with me at the end of our membership meetings every 6 weeks for an hour. And I tell them something like, here's an example. So when I was told I had ALS, it was conveyed to me, I don't know what they said, that I had probably a year, maybe two to live. But and so I started preparing to leave. I mean, I did the normal things like will updates and stuff, but mostly I started looking at what goes on when someone dies, what goes on in your mind and your body, and I agreed to share all that with the people who were in these workshops with me. And so, and I agreed to do the same exercises with them I was doing. And we recorded it all. So one of the things, excuse me, I need to get a drink here.
Of course.
No problem. Matt, I looked it up. If you go to Carol's website, carolsanford.com, under offerings, you can see the conscious dying community and access. It's
It's
amazing.
under carolsanford.com.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have offerings, you have businesses, change agents, the summit, keynotes, and
That's
books.
not Carol Sanford. Well, and then at the top say seed-communities.com.
Yes.
That's a website it's on. Not Carol Sanford has all my books and my podcast.
Yeah, but it's under you. Everything's on that website, but there's a link called offerings, and it has your keynotes and
Okay.
book clubs. So it's on there too, because you said websites. Yeah. I'm
That's
not gonna
my
argue with you.
daughter. Yeah, that's probably my daughter. I was going to tell you something I've forgotten.
You got it.
Oh, I know. This upcoming session in 2 weeks, I've had a really strange turn of events with this diagnosis. We found out about 6 months in that I've actually had this for 10 years.
Really?
Not 1 year. And
Wow.
I knew something was wrong for a long time. I fell a lot. I thought my teeth were causing me to have speech and swallowing problems. When I looked at the first time I went to physical therapy, and it had been 10 years before my diagnosis. And so that changed my attitude. Oh, I've already lived 10 years. Stephen Hawking, who had this, lived for 55 years after diagnosis. So I went back and decided to write another book. I thought, well, maybe I got a few years. And I created a whole new set of events for businesses they'll run next year. And I may die sooner, but it's interesting to watch when you're given a life sentence and kind of a short term, you quit taking care of a lot of earthly things. You don't care much. I managed to eat so bad, I gave myself diabetes. How dumb. that was kind of, well, who cares if I'm going to die?
Sure.
And then I thought, that's not good. So I now switched to my better eating plan and reversed it. So
Good.
watching yourself make choices and what drives them, I blamed the doctors for a while because they told me I was going to die in a year and I shouldn't enjoy life. Eat whatever you want. I don't care if it's bad for you. And then I remembered I have stewardship. That council we're talking about gave me a body and the condition I fulfill my work. And so I went back to taking care of it. Those are kind of things we talk about in the conscious dying. It's a little weird.
I don't think so.
Carol, what other things, what kind of advice, I guess, would give? Look, we're all dying in some way, right? We are going to have that happen. And you're obviously much more conscious of it, and very what's a very sensitive issue. You certainly handle with a lot of grace and class, and your willingness to talk about it. And what would you say to other people or yourself before that? Like, where are the things that don't matter or do matter more? And how is that? How are you looking at the world? You've talked about a little bit, but I mean, could you expand on that? Like, what would you say to people? Because look, let me qualify that a little bit. I love to work and I love to build my businesses and but I also love my family and I love my free time and my freedom and traveling and helping others. And there's all these things that I really care about, including having a beer once in a while and other things. Are what are any of these things, you always hear, well, when it comes down to, you're not going to care about how much time you spent working, but you have said right at the beginning you want to continue to provide value. It obviously matters to you, and that's why it matters to me too. So to me, it's very counterintuitive, this idea that, oh, I find out this news, and well, now I'm just going to eat ice cream and sit on the beach all day long. That's not what you decided to do, which is the opposite of what so many people I've heard over the years. Oh, you'll never be concerned with how much work you put in. And I've never thought that way. And you're kind of proof to me that providing value and doing other things, even under your circumstances, is where you want to spend your time. So I don't know if that question makes sense.
First, I don't give advice to other people. I can tell you what I think about.
Okay.
No one should take advice from anyone else.
I think you told me that last time we spoke, Carol.
Well, that's what people think you're supposed to do, I guess. I don't believe in being an influencer, a thought leader, an expert. All that's garbage, and it's all about ego. So here, let me tell you more about what I mean by work. There's capital W work and small w work. All right. And capital W work, it's the kind of work that's not about money and success and accomplishment. It's about inner work and knowing how I take to grow me and what gives me more force and capability. And the small w work is what most people mean when they say you won't care about that. But let me tell you what I included in my version of work. I meet every Wednesday, including today, in a couple of hours with my 24-year-old grandson. And he every week picks a work idea, a capital W work idea, and an article out of an array of books on my bookshelf, which he now has copies of some of. And he and a young woman who's a part of my community read it. And then I talk about how we would apply it to ourselves and what difference it would make for about an hour. Like today, he sent one that says, it's perfect, your question. It said, how do we give attention to the inner being more than the world and what we think we can do to change it? Because if we spend all our time trying to figure out how to change it, we begin to think we know how. We get arrogant and full of hubris. And so I don't know how today will go, but I usually design a little exercise to apply it to us. That's an hour of my life and a little more because of reading a couple hours. That's work. And what it is the kind of work that's capital W work. At the same time, I do small w because I do that. Yesterday afternoon, I met with the executive director of the senior living, assisted living home I live in. He's having a terrible time with retention and rising costs. And so I thought, for about the fourth time in the last few months, I sat down with him and helped him think about where he's getting trapped, where his mind is going, what's he giving attention to. And we looked at what are the principles that he might manage by. And of course, he first says, I'm too busy. We got too many fires. We got 360 residents and almost as many caregivers, house cleaners, and food service. I don't have time to do that. I said, okay, here's the first thing you have to switch. You have to switch from impossible to possible. And that's a huge, huge step. And then you have to commit to doing something to move you toward again. Well, you say you want what I give him all my books. He's read the books. You say you want to do that, but you just gave me an excuse. All right, so what you need to do is first set up a 1 hour session every other week or at least every month and develop people. He said, well, but you mean train them? I said, no, I mean develop their ability to see how they're running their life, how they're running their work. And after you've done that for about a year, the second thing you can start to do is give them more freedom to set objectives because now they can see themselves and keep developing. Don't stop that. And then teach them how to reflect on the effects of what they're doing. I'm pretty soon you won't need any supervisors. You won't need any discipline because I've done it with over 100 companies. When you develop people, all the, what do they call them, accommodations we put in to manage what isn't working aren't needed. It's really, we don't start from the time children are young, teaching them to see what they're doing, their effects on the world. And if we did, we'd have a very different world. So that's kind of a story, something like that, that when people are asking me what to do, I said, I don't know what to do, but here's the premises and principles. Develop people, give them an opportunity to apply it and how to reflect on it. And then you can get out of the way, but not before you do those other things.
Develop people, give them an opportunity, or give them an opportunity to reflect on it. And
no.
I'm missing something in between.
Yes. Give them, okay. Develop forever. That's an underlying line. The one on top of it is an opportunity to apply the kind of new thinking they're coming up with.
And then
Number 3, reflect on the effects of what they're doing, what it's producing in the world. And then third, slowly reduce yourself as being the external source of all ideas. Now, I'm way oversimplifying. I talk about this in every book I write. If you don't create a culture of development where all human beings grow and apply it to their current work, they can't figure out how to apply it to new work. Can you understand me? I'm losing.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
very clear.
And
Very
go
clear.
ahead. And Carol, this is all very interesting to me. I have in my businesses, I have several hundred employees, and so I can relate to the gentleman's challenge there, and that's why I was asking for some clarification, is because it's challenging, and you put in the energy and the time, and even when you feel like you have it, which I do most of the time, but the results aren't always what you want, and always looking for ways to.
Are you training people or developing people?
In our world, I think it's we're training people. Carol, I
Yeah.
own Subway restaurants, right? And there's a
Right.
lot of turnover, and there's a lot of turnover probably because we're training people, not
Yeah.
developing people, right?
And not going through the cycle I just gave you.
Yeah,
All right.
no, and that's hitting home. That hits home with me. It really does.
Okay, so every book I have is woven with personal development for everyone, including you. So I have a story in one of my books about Kingsford Charcoal, which did own about 14 manufacturing facilities plus marketing, etc. And we took them from killing about 6 people a year, accidentally, of course.
Of course.
It was so unsafe, to being 70% market share. And they still own that of the charcoal market. And the way we did that is create a culture where I met with them, and you have to have somebody help you. I'm sorry, I'm dying. I can't help you, but I have to have someone who knows how to do development and not training. It doesn't mean there aren't things to train people on, but I have in the last 40 years developed thousands of managers and hundreds of resources to do this. And so you have them coming together every month or 6 weeks, and for a day or two, and you'll think that's too much. But if you have them, even here with the ED Harrison, well, do it for an hour. No, if you think you can't do it for a day, then you stop. No, do it for an hour. You can't do it for an hour, do 30 minutes.
Right. I
Do it
follow.
more often. And you have to have a technology of the mind to work on the inner being to help people. And I work with companies who do a lot of service like you do. And it's hard at first because the turnover, this reduces turnover in every company I've been in to pretty close to zero. And
Wow.
you'd think it'd be, they can quit doing incentives and bonuses because all those make retention worse.
Really?
Yes.
What that's totally counterintuitive to me. Can you explain that?
Yes, you're using the wrong theory of motivation. You think motivation is external. It's not with any human being. It's they want to grow. They want to make a difference. And you will attract the people who are the worst employees who know how to play the game and learn the system. They aren't there for customers, or they're there for the incentive. So, and I wrote a whole book on that called No More Feedback. Have you read it?
No, I was just going to ask you, what's the title of that book? No More Feedback?
Well, it's in all my books. I'm going to give you two. No More Feedback gives the first book I wrote on it. My last one came out 2 months ago called No More Gold Stars.
Yeah.
It's a destruction, my ability to destroy the theory of behaviorism. And I go back to its history, how we got into it, why we adopted it, and how it's wrecked the education, business, the military, and families.
Wow. Wow. I've got to read it, Carol, because
You do.
that fastens up.
Otherwise,
I do. Yes, I'm very sincere on that.
there's another reason you need to, you particularly bring in younger and younger employees.
Correct.
They know this. They know what I know, and you don't. And they
Okay.
will not stay working for you. I'm watching hundreds of thousands, and they write to me, are quitting their jobs after getting big bonuses to join. They found that the bonus they thought would be exciting, they now have a job that has meaningless work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A lack of autonomy, a lack of agency. And so they're quitting. You're not going to have a workforce. Retention is going to get worse and worse unless you can switch your theory of change and your theory of motivation. And that's all I write about.
What you're saying resonates with me. Believe me, it's been the
Yeah.
last several years or more where that I'm not saying anything that any people in similar situations might aren't seeing everywhere. It's not just me, as you well know.
Exactly.
It's everywhere, and the battle is, at least for me, it's how do I create a culture that provides the type of things that workforce does value. And it's been a real quick, in my opinion, I could be wrong, it's been a real quick change from what quote unquote used to work or what people used to think to what the younger generation is. And I'll be honest, I am very frustrated for years on this, and the last several, it's been like, okay, this isn't about me and my frustrations. It's about what does this workforce value and what do they want, and the bonuses and some of those kinds of things that are external, and they don't seem to resonate to the same degree. And so what you're saying really rings true with me. And the next step is adjusting or fixing it, or whatever the correct term is.
Okay. I'm going to give you a bigger reason than keeping your employees for doing this.
Okay.
The reason democracy is failing now, would you agree? It's falling apart. It's because we substituted 120 years ago incentives, rewards, behavior, and made people externally driven and unable to think for themselves. And now we've got, it's every business person, every school system doing the same kind of thing, external, and people got addicted because you can retrain the brain. And so people became addicted, and you're part of the problem of the failure of democracy. That is a good reason.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I'm so glad I have that over you now, Matt, because in my education class, Carol, I think I told you last time, I select kids from 8 school districts and I take the top 32, and they want to be there, which is huge, but we don't. They get grades, but I don't even really know what they're based on. It's all the portfolio work we do and all the projects we do. So despite Matt's efforts in failing democracy, I'm actually doing my best to help prop democracy back up. But I can't fight big business. I'm trying my best.
Well, education has its own problem.
Yes.
And what is because what's happening is, as long as anyone's grading anyone, they're focusing on the wrong things. And so you get Matt because he got a bit over you also.
I remember that's the second time you've scolded him. Last time I kept calling myself a teacher and you kept telling myself to correct myself. I'm an educator, right? Not a teacher.
Well, that's what I want you to be.
Absolutely.
An educator resource, because a teacher means I know what they should know, and I'm going to make sure I test and make sure they learned it. My new book, I don't know whether you've seen it, No More Golf Stars. The subtitle is Regenerating Capacity to Think for Ourselves, because we can't think for ourselves. No one can, and most students can't either, because even in system where we do some of what you're doing, we don't really teach the kind of inner work that we teach, knowledge, and applying it to projects. So it's a big deal to change education, but it's better than teaching.
Carol, when you said earlier 120 years ago, what I think I heard that you correctly, that you said what happened 120 years ago. What were you referring to?
I've got the full story and all the research in my new book, but a guy named John Watson created the theory of behaviorism. He'd been working with Pavlov. You know who Pavlov is?
Yeah.
Pavlov's dogs, of course. Yeah.
He said, "Wow, look at that! You ring a bell, and the dog comes to eat. You can condition people. We could get rid of all the criminals in the world if we condition them to certain ways of behaving." He had just at that point, we had just mandated state by state, what do you call it, compulsory education. And he was the driver of how it was established. And
Wow.
yeah. And he went to businesses and taught them how to condition their employees, and went to schools and they went to families and made everybody not believe that they could know. You had to have an expert. So he introduced the idea of experts and certified licensed people. And the whole idea was we couldn't think for ourselves because we couldn't see ourselves. We couldn't see inside. We couldn't see our thinking. And so he ended up getting fired from Johns Hopkins because of an affair. And then he went to Madison Avenue and created Madison Avenue and how you condition buyers. That was in 1905. He got his doctorate and started this mess. You know who Tom Peters is? In Search of Excellence. He wrote the book In Search of Excellence.
Okay.
And it's the top 5 authors in the last 100 years of business books. He wrote the foreword, or one of the forewords to my book. It said that everything on his ear he ever thought was true, everything he ever taught. And then he helped every business person read my book and did what it said, because I unraveled the thread that got us to where we are.
Interesting. Well, so I've got 2 books that I need to buy.
Yep.
When you were talking about, so that was that shift to looking at to the behavioral shift, was that in your research, was that intentional to
yes
in it for a negative outcome?
Yes,
or it was okay.
Well,
with what end in mind?
Okay,
Controlling
psychology
people?
was mixed up in the philosophy department just prior to the turn of the century, and they weren't able to get grants. They looked at what the physics and chemistry and physical science, quote, sciences did, and got all sorts of money and recognition. So psychology decided they wanted to be a preeminent player and seen as a science. So they developed all these IQ tests. I was subjected to them. You'll see my story. And I was rated as a moron, literally retarded. And that was because I didn't know how to take their tests. I don't see the world that way. They did. So they said, and I'm not the only one who's written about this. I said that they spoke at psychology conferences and said, we have to be in charge of psychology, of all of it, and everywhere it plays out in business. Because now they gave a really good reason, which was they were up against, because we had a commercial farm shutting down small farms. We had a assembly line business shutting down small business, and we had compulsory school shutting down small schools, and so there were people in chaos and fear, and there was more crime and more immigrants being brought in to fill up assembly lines, and so people were very afraid, more than usual, and there were people who were opposing the solution to be eugenics, kill people, prevent them from producing. And John Watson was very clever. He said, I can condition, we don't have to kill them. And so that won. And he said that. He didn't make this casual. And he said, we need to become preeminent scientists. And so they developed more scientific method that was partial and said, we're never going to study the inside of people, only their behavior. That's why it's called behaviorism, because they said you can't study anything but behavior. So we came to believe that. It's not true. So that's how we got where they are. They want to be famous and rich.
Okay. Well, wow.
Yeah, I'm looking. The more you started talking about John Watson, I'm looking him up. I've heard of him. I just didn't put the name of who the guy was that did that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's been 120 years.
120 years we were on the wrong track. As Tom Peters said to me, I'm the only one who ever wrote a convincing case because I have the history of what it did wrong, but I have my own 50 years of proving what works. And so I have 100+ case stories in my books.
Well, I'll tell you, Carol, I've been thinking a lot about our last episode. I've been using some of the terminology you gave me. I've got a page. Usually I cover one page when we have a guest. I'm writing in all the corners of my notes right now. You know, you're going to be in my thoughts as long as I keep growing as a person. I mean, I know we've never met you in person, but spending these couple hours, you're shaping me more than you think. I mean, you really are.
I don't want to shape you. I want to give you a process to better reshape yourself.
That's the better way to put it. That's the
Yeah.
better way to put it. Yes.
Yeah, that's why my subtitle is Regenerating Capacity to Think for Yourself. Don't ever accept anyone's expertise that they call themselves a thought leader. And I'm still having to clean up behind my PR firm. They run around calling me those, and I don't catch them. So if you find any, help me clean up my own history.
I will for sure. Matt, anything else?
No, Carol. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a pleasure, and I, you started off with talking about just delivering value and something I believe in wholeheartedly, and so when you said that, I knew we were off to a great and interesting start, and I just you've given so much and continue to give so much, I think, in ways that people need to.
Yeah.
I think people need to hear so much of this, but I don't know what it is, but it's so challenging. I have a difficult time finding people who really resonate with me the way you do, Carol, and I'm searching for it. But what happens to the people who aren't searching for it, who are living in this world right now of social media and videos and I don't know where they get the big W from. I don't know where they get
Don't worry about them. Ignore them. What you want to do is do your work. Speak about it. Help me promote this book and maybe others that are like it. And because people can find us, because you said you were looking. Well, so are thousands of people, and they get hooked easily on the do-good ideas. So there's a guy named Herb Simon, Nobel laureate, and the reason he's a Nobel laureate is because, hold on, come in, Selena. I'm on a call. Uh, he would an idea which was people tend to look for better than the bad instead of looking for the best. What
Okay.
is really true. They do. So you found lots of good ideas for your company that were better than the guys, but it's hard to learn to think so you can generate some that are the best. And so that's what I try and teach people. Not what are the ideas they should copy best practices, but ways to think about it so they can generate their own, not even use mine, use my processes to be able to build it. So that's what I hope for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Carol.
Carol, this was fantastic. We got right into it so quick. We didn't even introduce you, but I think people have figured out who you were throughout the episode.
I don't like introduction. They get
Well,
in the way because they're all about the small W word. I got a lot of credentials. If that's important, they can look them up.
this was fantastic. Carol, we wish you the best. I mean, you are a rock star the way just your thoughts on everything.
Well, I don't know about that. I loved it and am loving my life. I've lived a blessed life, and hope to get a little more of it. But when it's time to go, the new will come in, whatever's needed. I love you both. You're very special beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. That's
Carol,
very nice of you. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Bye bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye, Carol. Whew.
Wow.
I'm gonna keep the recording going just for a minute.
I mean, that was amazing, wasn't it?
So we talked about writing a book earlier, and I'm thinking, how in the world can I write anything after listening to her?
Right? We talked about the imposter syndrome, and I mean,
But then she thinks so high, like she remembered us and wanted to come back on, and we're just
I don't know what
blown
to say.
away.
I don't know what
I'm
to
blown.
say.
I did think of a title for our book though, through
What's that?
her. Do your work with a W, with a capital W. Speak about it. Speak about it and let others find you.
What wasn't that profound, huh?
Yeah, because I'm out looking for people. I get, just keep
Yeah.
doing your thing.
Man,
It's
that was
so,
really and she's obviously, I mean, dealing with the ALS, which is just a devastating thing, and the perspective, she talk about perspective, right? And talk about someone with a worldview that's just, gosh, I don't know what